let's talk about the past. Because last week we put out a video that we were working on for a long time.
Yeah. As you can see, that was recorded when I was back in Sweden, which was like, like a month and a half ago or something like
Yeah.
that. Like well over a month ago. So
Uh,
that video has actually been, and then like we scripted that before that as well. So
yeah.
like we've been working on that video for quite some time.
So let's. So what we intended to do here is there was a bunch of we showcased, like, if you guys didn't see it, we put up a video about all the tools that we use to make our game. And it was more of like a general like game development video, so it's in the context of Satisfactory, but it's not like necessarily specifically just about, it's not a Satisfactory video, it's more like about game development. And yeah, we showcased all the tools that our different disciplines used, and a lot of people liked it. But there were a couple of questions that some people had, so we thought we'd just like, sort of go through those things and have talk more about it.
Yep. So there were like three major recurring questions, and then we can also take some extra questions from people in the chat afterward. But I'm just going to go over these three things real quick. I've only got one monitor, so I kind of have to cut out chat. I'll see if I can try and keep an eye on what you guys are saying while I also check my notes.
They're not saying anything important anyways.
All right. So anyway, if you didn't watch that video, it was a massive video. It was like 41 minutes long or something like that, where we talked about 69 tools that we use to make Satisfactory, basically, and also included some behind the scenes shots of those tools and Satisfactory stuff that using those tools. Yeah, nice, exactly, right. And you know what, that wasn't actually intended. That actually wasn't intended. When I made the script, the way that we did this, right, was I had a document and I put some of like the disciplines there, and I was like, if your discipline isn't there, I sent it to everybody, and I was like, if your discipline isn't there, add your discipline, add the tools that you use under your discipline, and then we'll have a big list. And we did that, and it actually just fucking came to 69. That was unbelievable, right? And I was like, well, you know what? I don't even want to ask for any more tools. We're just gonna leave it there. So we rolled with 69 tools. That's how that worked out, okay? So, and this sort of leads me to the first question that a lot of people ask was like, where's the QA tools? Like, QA tester discipline wasn't even in the video at all. Where are the tools? And so I thought I just mentioned the deal with that. Okay, so like, first of all, we sort of, like, we do have a QA person. Their name is Uzu. They came on board at Coffee Stain as QA first and foremost, but they now do like stuff in a producer role. So they're kind of a producer too, but they still do QA management too. So that usually consists of them testing the game a bunch, but then also keeping an eye on like things like the QA side, etc. as well. But the reason there was no QA tools there, or no QA was in the video at all, is actually pretty simple. It's just that when I put that document out that I was telling you guys about, no QA discipline was created there, and no QA tools were added, right? And that's actually just because he actually didn't see that the document was shared, for starters. And then also, after all the tools came in from everyone and all the disciplines were there, I figured we'd probably have everything because we have a lot already. And so I forgot to I forgot about QA and didn't ask him about it. So, I could have jumped in there and asked him about it to figure out what he has to say, even though he missed it.
It wasn't just you, it was also all the people involved in making that video too. So like, sometimes that happens.
Yeah. But I sort of just feel a little bit responsible as a person who tried to organize the video, that like, maybe I should have caught that. I think I should have, but I didn't. So that's a little bit on me. But it was simply just because there were no QA tools added to the list. If there was, then we would have included it. There were other disciplines that I hadn't included initially, but then those people went and added their disciplines, and then we added them to the video. So that's the only reason why there was no QA stuff. But I went and asked the QA guy, like, if we had included it, like, what tools would we have included? And it actually would have just been Monday.com for issue tracking, and the QA site for bug tracking as well, and then video recording software like OBS and Shadowplay, and that was pretty much all he had to add. So that would have, we could have added the QA site to that video, and that would have brought us up to like, I guess, 70 tools, if we did that. So that's pretty much the QA side of things. Fired, yes. He forgot, yes. So the next question that a lot of people asked was, why did we switch from Maya to Blender? So if you've seen the video, you'll see that we talked about that we used to use Maya for 3D modeling. in animation. We still use Maya for animation, but we switched from Maya to Blender for modeling. And the reason we switched was, so like we switched when Blender 2.8 came out. It had a bunch of improvements to existing features and overall stability. We had some people in the studio who were already using Blender, namely Simon specifically, and Simon was like a big sort of evangelist for Blender and really liked it. Yeah, so basically y'all can hashtag blame Simon for the switch. So there are some pros and cons. For example, Blender is free, for example, and the team felt that Blender was, a little bit more reactive to the demands of the industry as well. So yeah, the team gave Blender a try and they liked it, so they switched. However, our animator kind of preferred Maya for animation, and also like I think one of the cons as well is that I think maybe UV wraps might be a bit weird in Blender or something as well. But
yeah,
it's yeah, but for the most part, they preferred Blender. Animator still wants to use animation, like some of the plugins there in Maya. So, and we have no issue using two different softwares either, because Maya and Blender, they can export to the standard FBX format, which, works pretty much universally, and is also what UE4 requires anyway. So, like, there's no issues when sharing files between Maya and Blender, between the animators and the 3D artists. So that's the answer to that question. Okay. And last but not least is why Perforce over Git? So I asked the programmers, and we got a bunch of reasons for why we went with Perforce, but also a bunch of reasons why Git would also work. So first of all, like we've just been using Perforce forever at Coffee Stain, so there's the first thing. Ever since I got there, they've been using Perforce. But anyway, the two have like their strengths and weaknesses. Perforce's strengths include better handling for large binary files. It's also better integrated in UE4, at least by default, and also the ability to lock files, which is important for files that cannot be merged. So when you have certain binary files, it's important to lock them when you're working on them. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to merge them. Although that might be possible with Git if you do some stuff, I think, Snutt, to lock. But
yes.
Yeah, but some people felt that like Git actually handles like merging and branching a little better too. So there were reasons for and against different things, but we used Perforce. So like overall though, I think like the important takeaway is that like from the video is not that like the tools that we use are better than other tools, and I don't think that's necessarily what people were saying when they're asking questions of like why this over this, but it's just that like it's better to just be familiar with a bunch of different tools and then use what makes sense for you, for your particular game, for your particular studio and your setup. You could probably just you can achieve the same things in different ways using different tools. So like asking like why do you use this over this rarely results in like a clear answer, because you can find reasons for and against pretty much everything, but it all comes down to just like weighing those decisions for yourself and figuring out what's right for you. Yeah, so that's pretty much that.
Yeah, and I can add as well on because I think a lot of people, when they were asking about Git as well, is like you don't see Git a lot in game development, and I mean you can use Git for game development. My old studio, we use Git for game development. They have different, like you said, they have different strengths and weaknesses. And but I think like at least in Perforce's case, like also Unreal, like Epic use Perforce internally. And they build their tools around that. And I think one huge strength with Unreal Engine in general is the fact that like Epic made Unreal Engine to be a game. Like the engine is Unreal. Like, how do you explain it? It's like the editor is built in Unreal, right? It's running its own like thing. So they really go the whole like thing where they want to develop tools that are actually used, and they develop their own games in Unreal Engine so they can, develop tools that are actually useful. I think it's kind of that ties into the whole thing with Perforce as well, where like the tools they've made in Unreal Engine are really good in Perforce because that's what they're using themselves. Yeah, and another thing also I wanted to add is like I don't think there's any like tool at the studio that like we decide that everyone has to use. I think it's very much up to sort of people in their own disciplines, kind of like, what tools they prefer. Because I think Blender was really that one of those things where like because it's not like we needed to cheap out and like we gotta get Blender because it's free. It was more that like we tried Blender and then we did a thing where like, hey, everybody can try it and see if you like it or not. And then everybody just preferred it. So, I mean, sometimes that be like that.
Yeah.
It's the
And so
same.
like well,
Hey,
same
right.
thing with like Writer and Visual
Yeah,
Studio and stuff, right? So
exactly.
it's like our programmers. Some people just prefer Visual Studio. Some people prefer Writer. So we're not going to force anyone to do what they don't want to do.
Yeah,
We just we just make it work. So
yeah. Because I think there's a couple that use Visual Studio and a couple that use Writer, and sort of same deal. Like there's reasons why people prefer one tool over the other.
Yep.
It just I think at the end of the day, it always boils down to like what do you need to make a game, right? And that's kind of like where we're always fitting around everything. Because like you
Yep.
can make a great game in any engine or whatever. You just have to like pick the tools that you need for what you're making or what you prefer.
Yeah.
There's always a mix.
And your preference is a really valid point and argument as well, right?
For
Like
sure.
like I think a lot of people sort of sleep on that. Like I think a lot of folks, I know that like when I was studying game dev, like people were very absolutist about like tools that are being used or what programming languages use. Like this one is objectively the best, therefore you should use it. Like I don't think that's like a very useful mindset at all. Like I think like what you prefer after trying things is a very, very valid thing to acknowledge and to factor in. Yeah.
And I think it's also important to showcase as well that like there are a lot of tools needed to make a game of this scale. Like it might seem that like you can do everything in Unreal Engine and you can do a lot of stuff in Unreal Engine, but look at all the extra tools we also use around that to make the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a beefy like process in terms of like you need a lot to make games. I think that's something that I was kind of like when I started working with games is you kind of get like sidelined a little bit by the fact that there's so much you need to learn. There's so many components to game development. And you know, us putting out a 40-minute video of just like name dropping tools, I think hopefully paints that picture.
We didn't even go into much detail.
No.
Like we literally just kind of said what we use it for, then moved right on. Yeah, and so that's why, you know, like some people have asked me like what programming language should I use if I, you know, like it doesn't matter, like it, because what's more important is that you understand the concepts of game dev and like how to tie things together. And well, even before you know how to tie things together, you need to know that you need to tie things together.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get sound to interact with other parts of your game? You know, like those are the, you know, like the languages or specific tools don't even matter at that point. You just need to know what you need to do first, and then you find solutions. Yeah. And oftentimes, different tools offer the solutions you need, and then you use those tools.
Yeah, because it's been very often where I think even at Coffee Stain we had a couple of people that never used Unreal Engine before coming on, but like it's not like it's a tool that is hard to learn if you already know the core concepts of like, you know, graphics rendering or any general tool pipeline or anything like that. It's not that that takes a long time to learn. What takes a long time to learn is like how to apply knowledge into the overall like concepts of making games and stuff. So yeah.
I counted and there wasn't 69 total. I was very disappointed. Well, I added the list of every single thing that we included and it came to 69. It's in the video description.
There is like a plugin, I guess, that makes it 70 with the, but you also mentioned that it's a plugin.
No, I think that was included as a, I can't remember. I think that was actually included. It was initially as a bonus, but then I saw that I doubled up something, so then I just classified it as a tool. Okay. And then it came to 69 again. Yeah.
69 was plan confirmed. There we go. Outed. Yep. Defeated. So yeah.
Let's see if there's any questions about tools. Didn't Midnight Ghost and Devs last week say most of it was initially done in Blueprint?
Yep.
I think they said that most of it is still in Blueprint. Is that what they said?
Maybe they did.
Yeah. But there you go.
I took a peek like at when they were pitching to us. I took a peek at like their code base, and they didn't have a code base. I thought that was really cool, actually. Like that was impressive, actually. The fact that like there wasn't a single line of code written for that game, or like technically, I mean, it's visual scripting, so like, it's still coded, you know, it's programmed, but it's all visual scripting, right? But I thought that was impressive. to say the least. That you can make such a, because that game was like, even at the time when they pitched it, it was still like, that was a complete, what's it called, vertical slice of the game, which is like you can see all the elements of it. And I think they did say that most of it is still in Blueprint. I think some of their
that's what I remember them saying.
Yeah, because I know that some of their networking solutions were remade in C++, because I also helped consult a little bit on that. But I think the majority of like the game loop is still in Blueprint. So yeah, you can make big ass games like that in just Blueprint as well. So
yeah,
you'd be surprised. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, there's a bunch of games like that. Like Hotline Miami was also made in what's it called? I can't remember the name of that tool, the game engine anymore. But it's also like a game engine a lot of people just kind of glance over and like, oh, you can't make real games in that. You definitely can.
You really can. Like there is that that's the absolutist sort of mindset, right? Where it's kind of like, well, this is technically more performant than this. Like X is technically more performant than Y, therefore Y is bad. It's like, no, Y is not bad. X is just more performant if you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, it's probably not quicker. But you can also go pretty far with Y anyway, you know? So it's like, you just work with what you got, and you can kind of, you know, if you don't use the best tools, then that means, okay, sure, there's a limit to what you can do, but the limit might still be big enough. There might still be enough room to move.
Yeah, there's certainly like a degree of, sometimes you kind of have to adapt your game to the engine a little bit, or maybe you have to pick an engine based on what kind of game you're making. And that's certainly true in some cases. Like it's harder to make, I don't want to give an examples because like it's also, I've also seen exceptions to that rule. But like, you can definitely do it. It might just be a bit of a more of a hurdle doing something in a particular way in one engine or another, or using one tool or another. But you can definitely do it. Like it's not possible. I saw a comment here about like how Rider's intended with C#, and you mentioned you use C++. So Rider made a special like IDE that I think they're going to integrate into the general Rider, but they came out with a tool that was specifically for Unreal Engine development. That was something that because I jumped on board immediately when I saw that. At the time, I was still a programmer. Because one thing that always annoyed me when it comes to like Visual Studio and coding for Unreal Engine is that Visual Studio is just a general performant like IDE. What does IDE stand for again, Jace?
Integrated Development Environment.
I didn't know that until I saw that video. You just say IDE. I don't know. Anyways, so Rider came out with like this offhand like tool for specifically Unreal Engine and coding for Unreal Engine, and it's really lightweight because it's you know, Unreal Engine has their own like C++ formatting. The one strength of C++ is that it's very, you can kind of change the language a lot. You can change how you use it. Epic uses a lot of macros to like redefine how their code base is set up, and it's not jiving that well with like natural C++. They kind of have their own way of doing things. So yeah, Rider for Unreal Engine is like made specifically for that. It's really nice. It's like, you know, it's a lot faster to boot up than Visual Studio, which is like the main reason why I switched, because I just didn't want to sit out waiting for because our project is huge. It takes like, I think it takes an hour to compile the entire game with the engine and all on your own computer. And then, as you mentioned in the video, we have Incredibuild to sort of distribute the build process. So instead of taking an hour, it takes maybe like 15 minutes or something to compile the entire
Power of
thing.
friendship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just neat to use, and I think they're integrating it to the general Rider tool line. So now it's no longer, because it's been in like early access or whatever they called it for a long time. It's coming. So yes. Do you have anything else on this topic, or should we move over?
I don't think so. Is there any other questions about the tools video? If you don't know what tools video I'm talking about, there it is.
We can always come back to this topic if you guys have any more questions about this at the end.
Yeah, in the Q&A. Yep.
Oh, I just realized, derp.
What?
Yeah, never mind. I just forgot to update from Midnight Ghost in the agenda. I thought people were commenting about the title but they were commenting about the agenda. So
Oh,
my bad.
Whoopsie.
All right, makes sense
Whoopsies.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's dive into some of that community highlights, you guys.
Let's do it.
Boop. And then
Well, there's some questions here. 1 second. Well, actually, you know what? I think this is maybe worth talking about now because it is somewhat related. Some people have been asking, well, have we been looking at UE5?
Sure.
Since we're talking about tools and stuff like that. We have a couple people that have been looking into Unreal Engine 5, but we're just kind of looking into it.
Yeah.
We don't know, like, because we have modified Unreal Engine 4. And the other thing to note is that to take advantage of all the really cool things that Unreal Engine 5 has, it doesn't, it's not like you just open that engine and then like you get all that. Like you have to make everything with all of that sort of in mind and to use those systems. And we currently don't have any allowances to use those systems. That doesn't mean necessarily that we couldn't, but that requires a lot of investigation before we can know whether or not we can. But like, there's a couple people that are looking into it, but like, I don't know what that means really. Yeah. I don't think it means anything actually. Yeah. That's what it means. Yeah, it doesn't actually mean anything. But like, to answer the question, yeah, there are people who are looking into it because we're curious. Like, what would it take? I guess we're looking at it from the perspective of like, what would it take to get our game running on Unreal Engine 5? That doesn't mean we would then get everything that Unreal Engine 5 has to offer immediately. But like, maybe we'd get something for it. Maybe we wouldn't. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe this investigation will just be useful for future games that we plan to do, and like, it's not going to be useful for Satisfactory. Who knows? But
there are no like plans that we want to move over to Unreal Engine 5 or anything like that. There's nothing like immediately right now, because like nanites, the two main like technologies in Unreal Engine 5 that a lot of buzz is around is nanite and lumen, right? Nanite we don't really have, like we would have to convert our existing props to that for it to make sense, but we also don't have that much detail in our props, so like it also, we're not sure if that makes any sense. So that one is. But Lumen is kind of interesting, I guess, because they would change, but that would completely change our entire like rendering pipe, and there's a lot of stuff that we've made custom to work with the game as it is, and it's possible that like that might need to be completely revamped. Like we had to move over all those systems to the Unreal Engine 5 pipeline. And it's not like, it's hard to just say like it's worth that or not, because it might take like a full year to do that, or maybe it's faster, I don't know. But no plans at the moment, but we never like kind of disregard, like it's always a door that's open, so to speak, but yeah, we'll see what happens. And I saw another question I just want to answer very quickly. Somebody asked if I would ever release the Stream Assistant tool that I have. No. You would have no use of that tool. That is very specifically built for our stream. I also would not be proud putting that code base out in the wild. It's like made like in between things, so like it's kind of rough. But it's really useful for me.